Good morning, my fellow yogic travelers. It's another episode of my Dharma rants, which I call in Dharma tributaries. Mostly, I do it for me. And if anything, any crumbs fall off the table that you can use a little one liner here and there, I'm like thrilled about it. But mostly, it's for me. Continue to revolve through the teachings that have been important to me, challenge myself, see if I can come to it with a new level of wisdom. So, the first thing I want to share as we continue this week of Power of Myth Joseph Campbell insights is first, I love the poetry of Rumi. And so remember, ours is not a caravan of despair. Come wanderers, worshippers, lovers of leaving. Even if you've broken your vow 1,000 times, come, come again. So I'm not a father confessor for those of you who have let your yoga practice go, and then when you see me, you say, oh, gee, I can't get the clip. I don't care about that. We all have those moments. The important thing is, for me, is not to give up hope, not to give up faith, continue to be the person that I know I'm capable of and maybe even be better than what I've ever been before, however I want to choose to define that. So remember, come wanderers, worshippers, lovers of leaving. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Even if you've broken your vow 1,000 times, come, come again. Now, the next thing I like to do is I gladly try to do whatever I can to make joy part of my life. And once again, for the new people listening, yes, when suffering is in my life, in that moment, I'm right there, vulnerable, frail, uncertain, showing my broken, open lowliness, my contrite heart, absolutely. But when it's not in my face directly, in my experience, or if I'm with someone and they're not going through something that makes me want to compassionately serve them in that moment to help them in whatever way I can, even if it's just bearing silent witness, then I'm going to look for the thoughts that make me feel good. I'm going to go for the joy. Or as Joseph Campbell says, I'm going to follow my bliss. Now, I have learned from what I would consider the masters of affirmation, who in a certain way are broader in understanding. They're sticking to this, since many people don't get the positive demonstration. They don't believe that this is true. I'm not going to go into the neuroscience of this right now. But our words and our thoughts are stimulating in a certain way. And in fact, you can say they are attracting. They're like a magnet, which is going to be my affirmation for today. So when you're asking yourself these questions, why am I here? How can I make me better or life better for other people? If you accept that there is a law of attraction, and like a magnet, it pulls to you everything that you're thinking, feeling, speaking, saying, that which you give your thought to is that which you begin to bring into your experience. That which is like unto itself is drawn. So if you stay focused on it, you will absolutely draw it to you. That's the whole idea. The problem is that people give so much attention to what they don't want. That's the subject of attraction for them. That's the point of attraction. And we're very powerful in attracting that. So what you have to learn how to do as a conscious person is to watch the thought forms that you have and specifically cultivate them like a mantra. Repeat to yourself what it is you want to see. And of course, you have to take steps to make it happen. But subconsciously, you keep repeating to yourself, because that part of your mind is always listening in, taking you at face value, has no sense of irony, can't take a joke, like a genie that says to you, your wish is my command. So this is what they call the law of deliberate creation. You create on purpose. You don't do it randomly. Like we say, you don't let go of the rudder and hope the boat will drift in the right direction. So understanding this process is probably the best way to have any faith in it. That which you give your thought to is what you bring into your experience. So this is why contrast in your life serves you. You see a bad example and you know that's not what you want. Or when you're going into a shop for a gift, you're not even sure. You want to buy a shirt for your friend. The person comes in, you want a collarless shirt? No. You want a button-down shirt? No. So you don't know what you want yet, but by the process of subtraction, you know, I don't want that. And that brings you a little closer to what you do want. And of course, sometimes it's really hard to put out what you want, because once you put out what you want, you also put out the parameters for how you can fail. So that's why a lot of times people don't even put it out there, so that way they don't want to fail in any way. But once you get that and you realize that you cannot stay in the same place, life has changed, even though a lot of times we see there's continuity or continuation of what we're doing, but the old is not satisfied for long. And the moment you can get into the sense of, I can flow with things, I can move with things, I can adapt, which we do all the time, then it's easier to ride the bumpy roads. All right, so sacrifice and bliss is what the topic is today. Such a facere, to make something sacred. How do you make your whole life a kind of offering to spirit, or to however you want to perceive life? How do you offer yourself, give yourself to life? And mythology isn't about the song. Mythology is the song. I remember I always say, totally false on the outside, totally true on the inside. And so when you realize you're interacting with life, like Chief Seattle said, the human beings haven't invented the web of life. They're merely a strand in it. And whatever they do to the web, they do to themselves. So your sacrificial action is to keep you connected to the sacredness of life. And the bliss is not just happiness. The bliss is accepting the awesome, overwhelming quality of everything that's happening in life simultaneously. And a lot of it, of course, is horrible, horrific, filled with what we think of as evil or malfeasance or people's rudeness and ability to be cruel to each other. It's just amazing. And yet at the same time, there's something awesome and so valuable about life itself to put up with the whole game. Anyway, the sacred is everywhere. And that's why if you look in different cultures had different places where they honored that particular place, whether it's Machu Picchu or Jerusalem or Shangri-La or Mecca, Benares, it doesn't matter. Each culture has its own place where they feel like this is where the center of the world is. And this is another way, you could say, nurturing your creative imagination. How do you make the place where you are? How do you find in the place where you are the beauty of spirit? So this is a kind of creative incubation. In your own mind, in your own heart, you have to figure this out yourself. And that's how you end up bringing forth what you have inside of yourself, who you really are, which is spirit in action. Now, most cultures train you to be completely socially and economically determined by their values. That's called the fool's way, listening to what other people tell you, doing what's requested of you, like in The Wasteland, T.S. Eliot. There's that movie Babbitt. Joseph Campbell tells the story. Once he went into a diner, he was watching a family eat, and the boy was messing around, and the father was saying, "You got to sit there and behave yourself." And the mother said, "Don't tell him that." And the father said, "He can't do whatever he wants to in life. Look at me. I've never done one thing I've wanted to do in my whole life." Oh, and Joseph Campbell said, "See, there it is. There's Babbitt. There's the person living in the wasteland, not following their own intuition, but just doing what they're told to do. That's the complete waste." So how do you get it done? How do you find the wow feeling? How do you keep it alive? And once you realize that the human psyche is the inward aspect of your body, and your body's going to carry out these things, find what you love to do. Joseph Campbell called it follow your bliss. I used to call it the egosyntonic aspect, right? The things that give you pleasure, the things that you love to do, the things that you realize when I'm doing that, I'm on the beam, I'm on the ball, I love this, I'm grooving, my A game is going, I'm clicking on all cylinders. It doesn't matter what word you use, but something in you knows when you're there. And that's what you sacrifice. You die to the old way, to the old materialistic ways, to the old unloving roles, and you're reborn to the spirit. And here I don't mean spirit as like a specific concept connected to a religious tradition. Here I mean you identify yourself as the conscious life of which your body is the vehicle or the carrier. Because remember, that's the thing you notice in death. A person who is alive and conscious at one moment, now when they're lying there stone cold. They're not breathing, they're not alive, and they're not conscious. So the body becomes the vehicle of what consciousness and life is all about. And the more you study this, because this is one of the things you have to learn to sacrifice, right? Your ego, your self-importance. You're constantly trying to protect yourself and keep yourself around, solidify things, concretize things instead of flowing with life. So this is what's going to lead, hopefully, to a metaphysical breakthrough, a realization that you and everything else in life are a unity. It includes, incorporates, and goes beyond. That's the transcendent insight. No culture that I know of uses stories in any way to reject death. Death becomes the informer of what do you want to do in your life. and quickens your choices because time is running out. So even if separateness, the illusion of we're different than each other, I mean, we are different than one another, but the perception that somehow we're apart from one another instead of a part of each other. Separateness is the effect of the temporal forms, the sensibilities themselves make us see things moving in time. Time seems to be a way that we measure change. But the true reality is the unity that we have with all of life, and that includes the acceptance of one's own mortality. And another thing that I think is important to recognize about how do you sacrifice and the bliss that comes from that, which is the overwhelming acceptance of the whole situation at the same time, is what I call it marriage. And obviously it can be done legally within the sanction of whatever your culture is. But the idea is that you sacrifice to the relationship, that the two eggs become an omelet, something more than what each one of you could be by yourself, right? So that the total is greater than the sum of its parts. And it's an ordeal. It's not just a cakewalk in the open field. It's very, very challenging, but it brings countless opportunities for you to let go of the thing that keeps you separate, holds you back, makes you feel isolated and alone, to merge with this other person. And that's the way you learn how to use the rules, so to speak, without being used by them. So don't let anybody else throw you off. And to do this, of course, you got to sacrifice going with the crowd, right? Doing just what the masses do. You got to go your own way, be a little more of a maverick. And I love this image that Nietzsche says, that we're all born like camels, and our culture loads you down with all of its information, all of what's been bequeathed to you from the past ancestors. And once you're loaded, once you've gotten the instruction, once you've been obedient, and of course when you're younger, you're saying, hey, put a load on me. But then at some point, you're ready. And that point of readiness, what you do is, they say, the camel goes out into the desert. Right? You got to face this place like the wasteland by yourself. And what do you meet in the desert? You meet a dragon. And the dragon needs to be killed. And the only way you can kill the dragon is by ripping apart every one of its scales. And on each scale is written, thou shalt and thou shalt not. So when you're able to pierce through the cultural conditioning and to a great extent not listen to what they told you, this is the truth, then you become like an innocent child, a wheel rolling out of its own dynamic. And when you put aside the passing moment with its terror and its lust and its temptations and any of the requirements that you should live this way or live that way, then all of a sudden you're at the hub. You're in the center. And everybody else will be revolving on the wheel. What do I mean about the wheel? Check tarot card number 10, the Wheel of Fortune. In that circle of life, you're on the top, you're on the way down, you're all the way down, you're on the way up, or you're all the way up. But when you're in the hub, you can watch all the revolutions from the still moving center. Nobody can tell you where this is. No matter how much you read, no authority can grant you this realization. It's something that you have to recognize for yourself. But if you attempt to do this on an ongoing basis and don't lose heart and read those stories that remind you of how to have courage and how to face all those different adventures and challenges in your life, then you will be helped by hidden hands, and doors will open where you thought they never were, or where for other people they were closed. And so with that, let me just say, here's my affirmation for the day. Take it with you for what it's worth. It's called the magnet. Guidance, chance, and luck are just application of law. I broaden my current understanding. I gain ever new perspective. I create on purpose. I set forth deliberate intentions of what I want. That which I give my thought to is that which I bring into my experience. I focus on thoughts that bring me joy. I'm a magnet. attracting to me all that I think, feel, and speak. The positive way I feel is a sign of my success and growth. Peace be with you till tomorrow.